It started with a text message. Not one that I saw, one that I didn't. I was sitting on the couch, finishing off a beer, when her phone buzzed on the table next to me. Nothing unusual. Except she was in the kitchen, washing dishes, and I noticed something strange. She didn't react to the sound. Didn't glance over. Didn't reach for it. She always checked her phone. Always. Something in my gut twisted. I wasn't the jealous type, never had been, but instinct is a funny thing. I stared at the screen. It was locked, but a single notification glowed. A name. Just initials. DS. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the message vanished. I sat there, gripping my beer bottle, staring at the empty screen like it could somehow explain itself. A deleted message? That was new. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask. Instead, I did something I never thought I would. I waited. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention. And when you start paying attention to the person you love, really paying attention, you learn things you weren't supposed to. Like how she suddenly had a new friend at work. A coworker she'd never mentioned before but was suddenly full of stories about. How she started keeping her phone on silent. How she started leaving the room to take calls, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. Then there were the late nights. I'd wake up at 2, 3 in the morning and she wasn't in bed. I'd find her downstairs, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, phone in hand, screen lighting up her face in the dark. Couldn't sleep, she'd say. Didn't want to wake you up. But when I checked the Wi-Fi history on our router, something I hadn't done in years, I saw what she was really doing. Video calls. Late at night. 4 hours. To a number I didn't recognize. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself there had to be an explanation. I told myself she loved me and love meant trust. Then I found the receipts. Literally. A crumpled paper jammed in the passenger door of her car. I wasn't even looking for anything, I was just tossing out trash before a road trip. But when I unfolded it, I felt something inside me crack. A hotel. Not in our city. Not even close. A single room. 2 nights. Paid in cash. And the dates? They matched. Matched the weekend she'd told me she was visiting her sister. The weekend I had spent home alone, thinking of her, missing her, wondering if I should have gone with her like she'd invited me to. I stood in the driveway holding that tiny slip of paper, feeling like the world had shifted beneath me. Everything in me wanted to run inside, to throw it in her face, to demand answers. But I didn't. Because now it wasn't about answers. It was about proof. So I waited. Again. 2 days later, I got exactly what I needed. She told me she was going out with her friends. Dinner, maybe drinks. I told her to. Watched her get dressed, put on makeup, spritz on perfume she hadn't worn in months. Then I watched her leave. And then I followed her. She didn't go to dinner. She didn't meet her friends. She didn't even leave town. I trailed her car from a distance, heart hammering, adrenaline buzzing under my skin. She drove straight to a hotel, the same hotel from the receipt, and parked in the lot like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then he showed up. DS tall. Confident. Dressed sharp like he had nothing to hide. He walked right up to her and she smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. Like he was the best part of her day. Then she kissed him. Not a peck. Not a quick, guilty glance over her shoulder. A real kiss. A slow, deep, familiar kiss. I don't know how long I stood there, hidden in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I don't even remember driving home. But I remember what I did next. I made a call. Not to her. Not to him. To a locksmith. And when she came back home 3 days later, suitcase in hand, ready to tell me whatever lie she'd rehearsed, she didn't find me waiting at the door. She found someone else. And the look on her face when the door opened, that was the best part. She froze, one hand still gripping the handle of her suitcase, the other reaching instinctively for the doorknob. Except now, she wasn't sure if she should touch it. Her smile flickered, faltered, and then disappeared completely. Because the man standing in our doorway wasn't me. It was my brother, Ryan. Tall, broad, built like he belonged in a fight he was always willing to finish. And the way he was looking at her, it wasn't friendly. It wasn't neutral. It was the kind of look that made your stomach drop before you even knew why. Her eyes darted past him, scanning the house. Maybe looking for me. Maybe looking for an escape. Where's my husband? Ryan leaned casually against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest like he had all the time in the world. Not here, he said. Not your husband anymore, either. Her breath caught. Just for a second. Then she forced a laugh, one of those fake, airy things she did when she was pretending to be confused. Okay, seriously. Where's he? Ryan didn't move. He's done with you. That hit? I saw it in her posture, the way her grip tightened on the suitcase. But she was good. Too good. She squared her shoulders, flipped her hair back, and scoffed. Jesus, what is this? Some big, dramatic intervention? Look, I don't know what he told you, but this is a misunderstanding. Let me inside. I'll talk to him. Ryan tilted his head slightly like he was actually considering it. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Nah, her nostrils flared. Ryan, move. No, that was it. No explanations. No anger. Just a single word. A door that wasn't opening. A world that was suddenly shifting out of her control. I was watching everything from my car, parked just down the street. The perfect vantage point. I could see her expression, see the flickers of panic she was desperately trying to smother. She thought she'd come home to me. Thought she could bat her eyes, fake some tears, spin whatever story she decided on during her drive back. Thought she could keep lying, keep controlling the narrative, keep walking all over me. She had no idea that I wasn't even home. She had no idea that while she was off playing house with DS, I had been ripping apart the life we built. She had no idea that I had emptied our joint account. That I had packed up her things. That I had filed for divorce, that the papers were already waiting, that the locks were changed, that I had spent the last 3 days making sure she had nowhere to land when she came crawling back. But she was realizing it now. Her voice dropped lower, sharper. Ryan, I don't have time for this. Let me inside. Ryan didn't move an inch. Not happening. Her jaw tightened. This is my house. No, it's not. I watched the moment it fully hit her. The moment she understood that everything was different. She wasn't coming back to the same life. She wasn't walking through that door with a slap on the wrist excuse. This wasn't just a fight that she could twist and manipulate until I apologized for making her feel bad. She had lost. And she knew it. Her mask cracked just for a second and she did what she always did when she felt cornered. She got angry. You're king kidding me. She let out a harsh, humorless laugh. So what, he sends you to do his dirty work? He can't even face me himself. Ryan smirked. He doesn't need to. He's done. Her breathing turned shallow. Oh, come on. You really think he's just gonna throw everything away over a stupid mistake? Ryan's brows lifted. Mistake? She hesitated. Just a second. You know what I mean. Yeah. His expression hardened. I do. And so does he. Silence. A long, stretched-out moment of tension, thick enough to suffocate. Then she did the only thing left in her playbook. She tried to act like none of this mattered. She forced a scoff, rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath about how immature this was. Then she reached for her phone like she could pretend this was just an inconvenience, something she could fix with a single call. But she couldn't. And when she saw that her name had already been removed from our Wi-Fi, that the smart lock no longer recognized her code, that her last texts to me had gone unanswered, her hand clenched around the device like she wanted to crush it. She looked back at Ryan. He was still there. Still blocking the door. Still completely unfazed. And that's when she realized it. She wasn't walking inside. She wasn't talking her way out of this. She wasn't winning. For the first time in our entire relationship, she had lost. And for the first time, I wasn't the one left in pieces. She was. She stood there for a long time, gripping the handle of her suitcase like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to this. Not to being ignored. Not to being shut out. Not to losing. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, perfectly patient, watching her the way a cat watches a mouse that hasn't realized it's already dead. She inhaled sharply, forcing composure. Then she narrowed her eyes. All right, fine. No more fake smiles. No more forced laughs. The real her was coming out now. You really think locking me out of my own house is gonna fix anything? She stepped closer, voice lowering to a sharp whisper, like she thought she could intimidate him. You think he's just done? That he can actually walk away from me? You know him, Ryan. You know how much he loves me. Ryan smirked. Yeah. I did know. Her nostrils flared. She took another step forward, tilting her chin up. Let me in. Now. He didn't move. Didn't even blink. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, scrambling for a new angle, a new manipulation. And then, just like that, she flipped the switch. The anger drained from her face, and suddenly she looked soft. Vulnerable. Her eyes even glistened like she might cry. Ryan, please, she murmured. I get it. He's hurt. But I can fix this. I just need to talk to him. Ryan exhaled through his nose, amused. You still don't get it, do you? Her brows knitted together, perfectly rehearsed confusion. Get what? His smirk faded. He doesn't want to talk to you. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. He's done, Melissa. He said her name slow, deliberate. And the best part? It wasn't even hard for him. She actually flinched. Ryan's grin widened. Yeah. That one stings, huh? Her fingers curled into fists. Where is he? He sighed dramatically. Huh. Didn't I already tell you? He's not here. She sucked in a breath, shaking her head like she could physically reject the words. This is ridiculous. You know what's ridiculous? Ryan shot back. Thinking you could come back here like nothing happened. Thinking you could cheat, lie, disappear for days and still have a home waiting for you. That's ridiculous. Her face twisted. You don't know anything about my relationship. Ryan let out a short, sharp laugh. You're right. I don't. But you know who does? Silence. I could see her swallow. See the way her pulse fluttered in her throat. Ryan leaned in just slightly. Him. That was the moment. The moment she realized that I knew everything. Her mouth opened, but for the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. Ryan gave her one last look, like he was actually bored of this, and straightened up. Anyway, your stuff's in storage. The address is in your email. Oh, and he reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Papers. She didn't take them. His smirk returned. Thought so. He flicked the envelope at her feet. Melissa didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. And then finally she laughed. Not a normal laugh. A short, ugly, breathy sound. Oh my God. She stared at the ground, shaking her head, then lifted her eyes to Ryan. He really thinks this is over? Ryan tilted his head. It is over. She smiled. No, it's not. Then she turned on her heel and walked away. Not defeated. Not broken. Planning. And as I sat in my car, watching her disappear down the street, I realized something. She wasn't just walking away. She was about to make this so much worse that I knew she wouldn't go quietly. Melissa was never the type to take a loss. She didn't admit defeat. She didn't apologize. And she sure as hell didn't walk away without a fight. And I was right. Because less than 12 hours after she left my doorstep, she started playing dirty. It began with the phone calls. First, I ignored them. But she didn't just call me. She called my friends, my coworkers, even my mom. And every call had the same pattern. The same performance. She wasn't the villain. She was the victim. She sobbed into the phone, voice shaking, talking about how blindsided she was. How she had come home after a short trip to find herself locked out. Her husband gone, her life destroyed. All without warning. She made herself sound helpless. Lost. A wife who had done nothing wrong except love a husband who had suddenly gone crazy and kicked her out for no reason. Some people believed her. I knew because I started getting texts. Dude, what the hell is going on? She's in tears, man. Did you really just dump her like that? At least talk to her. You owe her that much. I didn't answer any of them, because I wasn't done. While she was busy making phone calls, I was finishing what I started. By the end of the day, Melissa no longer had access to anything. Bank accounts? Closed. Credit cards? Canceled. Car? Not in her name. Health insurance? Removed. Phone plan? Transferred to a personal account. The utilities, the subscriptions, the memberships? All gone. I even went as far as contacting our landlord, because guess what? Her name wasn't on the lease. Melissa wasn't just locked out of the house. She was locked out of her entire life. And when she figured that out, the real war started. It began at 3 in the morning. My phone buzzed with a single notification: motion detected, front door. I sat up, heart pounding. I knew who it was before I even checked the camera. And I was right. Melissa stood outside in the dark, phone in one hand, pounding on the door with the other. She wasn't crying. She wasn't pleading. She was furious. I watched as she kicked the door once, twice, then screamed into the night, "Open the door." I didn't move. Didn't say a word. But Ryan did. He opened the upstairs window, leaned out, and grinned. "Jesus, Melissa, it's 3 a.m. People are sleeping." Her head snapped up so fast I thought she might break her neck. "Where's he?" Ryan yawned. "Not here." "Liar." She stepped back, hands shaking with rage. "Let me in, Ryan. This is my house." He sighed. "Still no. You can't do this." Ryan tilted his head. "Oh, but we did." I could see it in her face, the panic. The realization that she had nothing. She looked down at her phone, tapping furiously, probably trying to check her bank accounts. I knew what she'd see. 0. She let out another scream, kicked the door so hard the entire porch shook, then turned and stormed off. Ryan watched her go, then glanced down at the camera and smirked. I give it 24 hours before she tries something even dumber. He was wrong. She didn't wait that long. Because by the next morning, the cops were at my door. I woke up to pounding on the door. Not the kind you ignore. The kind that means trouble. Ryan was already up, sitting on the couch, scrolling his phone like he hadn't heard a damn thing. But I knew he had. He was just waiting to see what I'd do. Another round of knocks, harder this time. Then a voice. "Police. Open up." I shot Ryan a look. He raised an eyebrow, then nodded toward the door. This was it. Melissa's next move. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and pulled the door open. 2 officers stood outside, a man and a woman, hands resting on their belts. Neither looked particularly happy to be here. "Are you my name?" the male officer asked. "Yeah." The female officer glanced down at a small notepad. "We got a report from your wife that she was locked out of her home and that you're refusing to let her in. She also stated that you took all her financial resources and left her stranded. Any truth to that?" Melissa was really trying to play the victim. I exhaled slowly. "First of all, she's not my wife anymore. Divorce papers were served yesterday. Second, this isn't her house. Her name's not on the lease." The male officer frowned. "She lived here, though?" "She used to," I said. "But she doesn't anymore." The female officer sighed, clearly already tired of this. "Do you have proof of that?" "Yeah." I pulled up my email, scrolling until I found the message from my landlord confirming that Melissa wasn't on the lease and that I had full rights to remove her. I handed them my phone. "It's all there." They both looked at the screen, scanning the message. The female officer nodded. "Okay, that covers the housing issue. What about the financials?" I crossed my arms. They were joint accounts, all in my name. I had every legal right to close them. Besides, she has her own money. That last part was a lie. I knew it, Melissa knew it. But the cops didn't. The male officer sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "All right, here's the deal. Legally, she has no claim to this place if her name isn't on the lease. And if those accounts were in your name, she's out of luck there too." But he gave me a pointed look. "She says you have her belongings?" I smirked. "Nope. Sent them to storage. She has the address. She can pick them up whenever she wants." The officers exchanged a glance. Then the female officer shut her notepad. "Well, sounds like there's no crime here." That was it. That was all I needed to hear. Melissa had lost again. But she wasn't done. Because the moment the officers left, my phone started buzzing. Not with texts, not with calls, with notifications. I frowned, unlocking the screen. Then I saw it. Melissa was posting. Everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even a TikTok. A long, dramatic post, detailing how I had abandoned her, how I had stolen from her, how I had emotionally abused her and left her with nothing. And people were believing it. Friends, family, even some of my own coworkers. My phone kept lighting up with messages. Dude, what the hell? I can't believe you'd do that to her. Bro, at least talk to her. This isn't okay, man. Melissa was playing the long game. And suddenly I realized she didn't need to break into my house. She was breaking into my reputation. Melissa was smart, cunning, dangerous in the way only a liar can be. She had lost control of me, but that didn't matter. Not when she could control the story. And she was winning. I watched in real time as people turned on me. People I trusted. Friends I'd known for years. Coworkers I thought had my back. Even family members started to hesitate. Because Melissa didn't just make herself the victim. She made me the villain. Her posts painted a perfect picture. The heartless husband who abandoned his wife with no warning. The monster who took all her money and left her homeless. The manipulative abuser who was now sending his violent brother to keep her out of her own home. None of it was true. But truth didn't matter. Not when drama was so much more interesting. The comment sections were war zones. Half the people were screaming about how I was a disgusting excuse for a husband. A controlling psycho who had probably been mistreating her for years. The other half were telling her to stay strong. That she deserved better. That they would help in any way they could. And then the worst part. She dropped the bomb. A new post. A single sentence. I'm scared of him. That was it. No explanation. No details. Just enough implication to destroy me. And suddenly, it didn't matter that I had never laid a hand on her. Didn't matter that she was the one who had lied, cheated, manipulated. None of that mattered. Because now I was dangerous. And people believed her. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, even emails from my own boss asking if everything was okay at home. Ryan was pacing the living room, scrolling through her posts, shaking his head. Jesus, she's really playing this card. I didn't answer. I was too busy staring at my phone, at the names of people I had thought were my friends, watching them comment things like, I always had a bad feeling about him. This makes so much sense now. I hope you're safe, Melissa. Stay strong. Ryan stopped pacing. You need to shut this down. Now. I exhaled slowly. How? Ryan grinned. Oh, I have an idea. 2 hours later, a new post appeared. But it wasn't from Melissa. It was from me. With screenshots. Every single receipt. The deleted texts. The hotel bookings. The video calls in the middle of the night. The proof of her affair. The proof that she had not been abandoned, that she had been the one who destroyed our marriage. And at the very end, a screenshot of the police report. Because guess what? The cops had actually recorded her false claims. And I had it all in writing. Melissa never expected me to fight back. But she had underestimated me. And by the time I refreshed the page, her entire world was collapsing. Melissa's lie had lasted exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes before it started falling apart. I kept my phone in my hand, watching it unfold in real time. The same people who had jumped to her defense were now scrambling to delete their comments. Some were backpedaling. Others were turning on her entirely. The shift was brutal. Wait, so she actually cheated? Why did she lie about being abandoned then? She had a whole affair and then played the victim? WTF? You made everyone think he was dangerous? Nah, you're actually sick for this. Even the most die-hard Melissa supporters couldn't argue with cold, hard proof. And Melissa? She went completely silent. No new posts. No replies. Nothing. But I knew she wasn't gone. She was waiting. Planning. Ryan sat next to me, grinning as he scrolled through the aftermath. I gotta say, man, watching her entire army turn against her? Deeply satisfying. I exhaled, rubbing my temples. It's not over. Ryan's smirk faded. No, it's not. Because Melissa wasn't the kind of person who admitted defeat. She didn't apologize. She didn't lose. And I had just backed her into a corner. Which meant she was about to do something insane. And I was right. Because exactly 20 minutes later, she showed up. Not alone. With him. I was standing in the kitchen when I heard Ryan swear under his breath. I turned, following his gaze out the window, and there they were. Melissa. And Diaz. She was standing in the driveway, arms crossed, chin tilted up like she was about to make a power move. And next to her, standing way too comfortably for someone who had absolutely wrecked my marriage, was her other man. He was exactly how I imagined. Tall, smug, wearing a button-down that looked expensive but trying way too hard to seem casual. Hands in his pockets. No shame. Melissa leaned over and knocked on the door. Ryan laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, this is gonna be fun. I didn't move. I just stared at them, the audacity of it all sinking in. Melissa was cheating with this man. And now? She was bringing him to my house. To do what? Gloat? Ryan nudged me. You want to answer? Or should I? I clenched my jaw. I got it. I pulled open the door, arms crossed, forcing myself to stay calm. Melissa's lips curled into a smirk. And I swear, it took everything in me not to lose it right there. She gestured lazily toward DS. Since you want to be petty, I figured you should meet Daniel. Daniel. DS Daniel. I didn't say anything. Melissa stepped closer. I just wanted you to see him. To see who I chose. Daniel smiled. Nice place, man. Too bad you couldn't keep her happy. Ryan made a sound so sharp and amused that Daniel actually hesitated. I tilted my head, voice flat. You're standing in my driveway, trying to flex that you cheated on me. You sure that's a win? Melissa's smirk twitched. I moved on. Ryan snorted. 3 days ago? Daniel frowned at him. Who the hell are you? Ryan grinned. Her worst ***king nightmare. Melissa ignored him. You think exposing me online was smart? You think you're winning this? She stepped closer, voice low. I will ruin you. I'll make sure no one looks at you the same way again. I'll make sure I cut her off. Melissa. She stopped. I took a slow breath. You already lost. Her eyes narrowed. You lost the second you stepped out of our marriage, I said quietly. You lost the second you lied, the second you played the victim, the second you tried to make me look like the bad guy. Her throat bobbed. And now? You're desperate. Melissa's fingers curled into fists. And for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. I watched her chest rise and fall, breath shaky, lips pressing together like she was trying to hold back. Daniel touched her arm. Babe, let's go. But she didn't move. She just stood there. Burning. Because she knew. She had nothing left. Melissa stood there, fists clenched, shaking. Not from fear. Not from regret. From rage. Because for the first time in her life, she couldn't twist this. She couldn't gaslight her way out. She couldn't lie, couldn't fake tears, couldn't pull some grand performance to turn me into the villain. I had taken away her power, and she had nowhere left to put it. Her new man, Daniel DS, clearly felt it too. He tugged her arm again, less patient this time. Melissa, come on. She didn't budge, didn't blink. She just stared at me. I watched as a million thoughts ran through her head. Calculations, new angles, new plays, and then just like that she smiled. Not a warm smile, not a real one. A cruel, knowing, dangerous smile. And I knew. She wasn't done. Melissa turned to Daniel and gave him the fakest, most affectionate little touch on the arm. You're right, babe. We should go. We have a life to build. She let those last words hang in the air, heavy, sharp, meant to cut. And then, without another glance at me, she walked away. Daniel followed, though he looked less sure of himself than when he had arrived. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. That was weirdly unsatisfying. I didn't answer. I just watched them disappear down the street, my stomach twisting. Because I knew Melissa. That wasn't surrender. That was a warning. Ryan clapped me on the shoulder. Whatever. She's out of moves, man. It's over. But I wasn't so sure. And a few days later, I found out why. It started with my boss. I was at work, head down, catching up on emails when my manager, ***, the guy who had always liked me, who I had never had a single issue with, ***, came up behind me, cleared his throat, and said, "We need to talk." I turned, confused. What's up? He wasn't smiling. HR. Now. I froze. HR? I felt the blood drain from my face, but I kept my voice steady. What's this about? His jaw tightened. You'll find out soon. That wasn't good. That wasn't good at all. I stood, heart pounding, stomach sinking, and followed him down the hall. The moment I stepped into that office, I knew I was fed. Because sitting there, arms crossed, a polite little smirk on her lips was Melissa. I stopped cold. HR looked between us, oblivious to the nuclear war happening in my head. My boss sighed, rubbing his temples. Your wife, ex-wife. I corrected instantly. Melissa's smirk twitched. My boss ignored it. Has come forward with some serious accusations. I clenched my jaw. Like what? HR cleared their throat and folded their hands on the desk. Harassment. Threats. A hostile and dangerous pattern of behavior. I laughed. Actually laughed. Are you serious? HR didn't smile. She's given us statements, text messages, and they hesitated, glancing at Melissa. Melissa put on her best sad expression. I just don't feel safe anymore. She was trying to get me fired. I inhaled sharply through my nose, keeping my voice calm. Let me see the evidence. HR slid a folder across the desk. I opened it. And that's when I saw it. Screenshots. Dozens of them. Text messages, but not ones I sent. Fake conversations. Fabricated threats. Whole paragraphs written in my name, telling her she was nothing, that I would ruin her, that she would pay for what she did. All completely made up. Melissa watched me scan the pages, head tilted, waiting. She thought I'd lose it. Thought I'd yell, panic, give her exactly what she wanted. Instead, I slowly exhaled, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. Because Melissa had just made a mistake. And I was about to end this for good. I closed the folder and placed it neatly on the desk. Then I looked up and locked eyes with Melissa. She was waiting. Waiting for me to snap. Waiting for me to lose control. Waiting for me to dig my own grave in front of HR, my boss, and anyone else who could ruin my life. She thought she had me. She thought she'd finally won. I smiled. Not because I was happy. Not because I found any of this funny. But because Melissa had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I turned to HR. You verify screenshots before acting on them, right? HR blinked, clearly caught off guard. Well, we take all allegations seriously, right? I nodded. But you don't just accept them at face value. You check timestamps. Metadata. Make sure they weren't, I don't know, I tilted my head. Fabricated. Melissa stiffened. HR hesitated. If there's reason to believe there is. I pulled out my phone calmly. Because I've never sent these messages. And I can prove it. Melissa's breath hitched. I tapped my screen a few times, then placed my phone on the desk, turning it toward HR. Here's my actual message history with her. I scrolled, slow enough for them to read. Notice something? HR frowned, leaning closer. My boss did too. Then, finally, HR muttered, they don't match. Melissa's face drained of color. She leaned forward quickly. He probably deleted the real messages, I laughed. Melissa, you know how cloud backups work, right? You can't just delete a message and pretend it never existed. I can get every single text I've ever sent going back years. HR's expression shifted. Doubt. Melissa saw it. And she panicked. She turned to my boss, voice shaking with fake distress. You know him, right? You know what he's capable of. You believe me. My boss stared at her. Melissa had always been good at lying. But this wasn't some whisper campaign, some manipulative social media post. This was real life. And she had just been caught. HR closed the folder, slowly. We'll need to investigate further. Melissa shot up. Are you? She caught herself, lowering her voice. Are you serious? HR nodded, already distant. Melissa turned to me, eyes blazing. I gave her the smallest smirk. And that's when she lost it. King think you're better than me? She hissed. You think you can just walk away after everything? After me? The office went dead silent. I just watched her. No words. No reaction. She was unraveling right in front of them. Melissa let out a sharp breath like she was trying to pull herself together. This isn't over. I leaned back, perfectly calm. Yeah, it is. She stormed out. HR took off their glasses, rubbing their temples. My boss exhaled like he'd just dodged a bullet. And me? I just smiled. Because now everyone knew exactly who Melissa was. And by the time she realized what she had done, it would be far too late. Melissa had finally lost. Completely. Not just in private, not just behind closed doors, but in front of everyone. My boss, HR, my coworkers, and the hundreds of people who had once jumped to her defense online. The truth was out. The moment she stormed out of that office, I knew there was no coming back for her. But Melissa wasn't the kind of person to go down quietly. And I should have known she had one last move left. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. I did. And the second I heard the voice on the other end, my stomach dropped. "Hey, Melissa." I didn't say anything, just waited. She exhaled, shaky. Not angry this time, not furious, just exhausted. "You won," she whispered. I didn't respond. She let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "I bet that feels good, huh?" Still, I said nothing, because I wasn't sure what this was. Was it another manipulation? Another attempt to twist the knife? Or was she finally, accepting the consequences of her own actions? Then, quietly, she said, "I never thought you'd actually leave me." That hit, because for the first time in this entire mess, I could tell she was telling the truth. Melissa had lied, manipulated, and played every dirty trick in the book. But at the root of it all, she had been certain I would stay. That no matter how much she hurt me, I would never walk away. That I would always be hers. She had bet everything on that belief. And she had lost. "You didn't think I'd leave?" I said, my voice calm. "Even after everything?" Silence. Then, almost too quiet to hear, "I thought you loved me more than that." I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and finally I answered, "I did." And then, before she could say another word, I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to Melissa. The next few weeks, she disappeared, deleted her social media, vanished from my life completely. The divorce went through without a fight. Ryan and I laughed about it one night over drinks. How after all the chaos, all the insanity, she had just given up. But deep down, I knew the truth. Melissa didn't give up. She just had nowhere left to go. She had burned every single bridge, and I had walked away without looking back. Months passed. The weight lifted. The anger faded. One day, I woke up and realized I didn't think about her anymore. And when I did, it wasn't with pain, just relief. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I was finally free. And she was nothing but a name I used to know.